The flashing red and blue lights washed over my front lawn, turning the quiet street into a surreal scene of chaos. 3 police cruisers rolled into our peaceful cul-de-sac on Maple Grove Court, their sirens cutting through the still night air. At the center of it all stood Patricia Garrison, arms flailing, face contorted with fury, as she pointed toward my house like she was leading a manhunt. "There he is!" she shrieked. "That's the man who attacked my guests. I want him arrested right now." I stayed on my porch watching the circus unfold. My phone was already open, security footage queued up and ready to go. As 2 officers approached, I kept my hands relaxed at my sides. On the inside, though, I felt a mix of irritation and grim satisfaction. Patricia had finally gone too far, and she had no clue how much trouble she'd just created for herself. When I moved into this neighborhood 6 months ago, I thought I'd found paradise. After years of apartment living, I wanted peace, a real community. The homes were pristine, lawns manicured, streets quiet. Everything seemed perfect. Until I met her. Patricia Garrison, the self-appointed queen of Maple Grove Court. She wasn't just the HOA president. She ruled this place like it was her personal empire. She lived 3 houses down in a spotless colonial home with hedges cut so evenly they looked measured by laser. On my second day, she showed up with a clipboard, smiling like a politician. Within 5 minutes, she'd reminded me of grass height regulations and the approved color palette for mailboxes. I smiled, nodded, and told myself I could live with a little micromanagement if it meant living somewhere nice. But 2 months later, the real problem started. Patricia began hosting what she called community gatherings every weekend. They weren't official HOA events, just her personal parties, complete with wine, loud music, and endless gossip. The trouble was, she always held them in the communal space behind our row of houses. And since my backyard connected directly to that area, her guests constantly overflowed onto my property. At first, I tried to be neighborly. I found beer cans in my garden, cigarette butts near my patio chairs, and muddy footprints across the grass. I cleaned up quietly, thinking it was just a one-time thing. Then her guests started parking in my driveway, blocking my garage like it was public property. I asked politely for them to move, every single time. Then came that Saturday evening. I returned home to find a volleyball net stretching halfway into my yard. My flower bed, crushed. My bird bath, knocked over. Patricia's guests were laughing, playing, acting like they owned the place. I walked over to where Patricia stood, holding a plastic cup and chatting beside a folding table full of snacks. "Patricia," I said evenly, "your volleyball net is on my property, and someone's destroyed my garden." She didn't even turn all the way toward me, just a dismissive wave and that condescending smile. "Oh, don't be such a stick in the mud, David. We're all neighbors here. A little community fun never hurt anyone." "I understand," I replied, forcing calm. "But this is private property. I need your guests to stay in the common area." Her smile faltered for a split second before she puffed herself up. "Well, I'm the HOA president, and I say it's fine. The boundaries aren't even that clear anyway. That night I decided I'd had enough. I installed security cameras covering my entire backyard and driveway, and I posted clear private property, no trespassing signs along my fence line. If Patricia wanted to play games, fine, but I was going to keep score. By the next weekend, her party was bigger, louder, and despite my signs, her guests roamed right onto my property again. One couple made themselves comfortable on my patio furniture. Another group used my garden hose to fill their cooler. Every second of it, I recorded. On Monday morning, I sent Patricia a formal, certified letter. In it, I clearly stated that neither she nor her guests were permitted on my property again. I attached screenshots from the security footage showing the trespassing and the damage. I copied the entire HOA board and saved every record. Her response came that same evening. She stormed up my driveway, letter crumpled in her hand. Her voice was sharp enough to slice glass. "How dare you threaten me with legal action?" she hissed. "I've been HOA president for 8 years. I know every rule, every regulation, and you cannot ban residents from community activities." "Patricia," I said, calm but firm, "I'm not banning anyone from community activities. I'm banning them from my private property. There's a big difference." Her face turned a shade of purple I'd never seen on a human being. "You'll regret this, David, I promise you that. The next Saturday, She set up another one of her gatherings, and I watched through my window as she gestured theatrically to my new signs, rolling her eyes for her guests' amusement. Some people looked uncomfortable, but Patricia's charisma bulldozed any hesitation. Then, around 7 p.m., I heard the unmistakable crash of breaking pottery. On my security feed, 3 of Patricia's guests had once again crossed the line, this time knocking over my brand-new ceramic planter while chasing a frisbee, and that was the moment I knew this wasn't just neighborly irritation anymore. Patricia was daring me to fight back. They laughed it off, brushing off the broken planter like it was nothing, and kept right on playing, now using my backyard as part of their volleyball court. That was it. I stepped outside, voice firm and measured. "Excuse me," I said loud enough for the group to hear. "You're on private property. Please leave immediately." One of them, a man in his 40s with a beer belly and a loud Hawaiian shirt, looked me up and down with a smirk. "Patricia said you were uptight." "Come on, man. We're just having a little fun." "Fun or not," I replied. "You're trespassing. Leave now, or I'll call the police," they muttered under their breath, but eventually shuffled off toward the common area. I could see Patricia standing across the yard, arms folded, lips curved in that smug, satisfied smirk. She'd done this on purpose, sent them to test my limits. Then something else caught my attention on my security monitor. Something much worse. While I was distracted by the volleyball players, 2 other guests had entered through my side gate, the one clearly marked private property. They were lingering near my garage. One of them, a man, was trying the handle. I stormed toward them. "What are you doing by my garage?" I demanded. The woman jumped back, startled. "Oh, Patricia said you had some folding chairs we could borrow." "Patricia," I said sharply, "has no authority to give anyone access to my property. You're trespassing and I have you on camera trying to enter my garage. Leave, now!" They didn't wait for me to say it twice. They scattered fast, vanishing down the side path. But the damage was done. Patricia wasn't just pushing boundaries anymore, she was encouraging her guests to cross them deliberately, to break the law. That night, I spent hours saving and backing up every frame of footage. I wasn't just documenting anymore. I was building a case. The next morning, I woke to a loud knock pounding at my front door. Through the peephole, I saw 2 police officers standing on my porch. My stomach tightened, but I took a steady breath before opening the door. "David Lawson?" the older officer asked. "Yes, that's me. We received a complaint that you threatened and assaulted guests at a community event last night. We need to ask you a few questions." For a second, I almost laughed. Patricia had actually done it. But instead, I kept my voice calm. "Officers," I said, "I have full security footage of everything that happened last night. Would you like to see it?" The younger officer nodded. "That would be helpful, sir." I invited them inside and pulled up the footage on my laptop. As they watched, their expressions shifted from neutral professionalism to visible concern. The evidence was crystal clear: trespassing, property damage, even an attempted break-in. When the videos ended, the older officer looked up. "Mr. Lawson," he said slowly, "it appears you're the victim here, not the suspect. The caller claimed you physically assaulted her guests." "That's completely false," I replied. "As you can see, I never laid a hand on anyone. I asked them to leave my property, verbally and lawfully." The officers exchanged glances. "We're going to need to speak with the complainant," the younger one said. "Do you want to press charges for the trespassing and attempted burglary?" "Absolutely," I said without hesitation. I watched through my window as they crossed the street to Patricia's house. She opened the door with all the dramatic flair of someone about to deliver an Oscar-winning performance. But as the questioning dragged on, her confidence started to crumble. Her hand gestures slowed. Her expression faltered. 20 minutes later, Patricia Garrison, the self-proclaimed queen of Maple Grove Court, was being escorted to a police cruiser. Her face was a mask of disbelief and outrage. The officers came back for my statement and copies of the footage. "Ms. Garrison is being charged with filing a false police report," the older one explained. "We'll also be pressing trespassing charges against the individuals shown on your video." You'll need to come to the station tomorrow to complete the paperwork. As the patrol cars pulled away, neighbors began trickling out of their homes. The sight of Patricia, our iron-fisted HOA president, being arrested was too juicy to ignore. Over the next several weeks, the full extent of Patricia's deceit unraveled. The district attorney's office took the false report charge seriously, especially given the crystal-clear footage. Patricia hired a top-tier lawyer, but it didn't matter. The evidence was overwhelming. At her hearing, she tried one last desperate defense, claiming that as HOA president, she had implied authority to use or authorize any property connected to community space. The judge shut that argument down so fast it echoed through the courtroom. He called her claim legally baseless and deliberately misleading. She was found guilty of filing a false police report, a misdemeanor, with a $5,000 fine and 100 hours of community service. But that was only the start of her fall from grace. The HOA board called an emergency meeting soon after. Nearly every resident attended. One by one, neighbors stood up and shared stories, years of intimidation, overreach, and petty power trips. It turned out I wasn't the only one Patricia had harassed. I was just the first to fight back with proof. When the vote came to remove her as president, it was unanimous. The board went further, banning her from holding any HOA position for the next decade. Patricia sat there in stunned silence, her face cycling between anger and disbelief as the gavel came down, but the consequences kept coming. Patricia worked as a real estate agent, and word of her arrest spread quickly through professional circles. Her broker called Karen the following Monday. By the end of the day, she'd been placed on indefinite suspension pending review by the State Licensing Commission. Being convicted of lying to law enforcement doesn't exactly inspire client trust, and in real estate, trust is everything. About 3 weeks later, I heard a knock at my door. A woman stood there, nervous but sincere. I recognized her from the security footage. "Mr. Lawson," she said softly. "I'm Sarah Chen. I was one of the people at Patricia's party. I just wanted to apologize. We had no idea we were on private property. Patricia told us the entire back area, including your yard, was part of the community space." "She told you that?" I asked, though I wasn't surprised. Sarah nodded, wringing her hands. She even showed us what she claimed were official HOA maps. We see now they were fake. Several of us feel terrible about what happened. We never would have stepped on your property if we'd known the truth. After she left, I sat for a long moment, realizing the full scope of Patricia's manipulation. She hadn't just abused power. She'd built an entire fiction around it, dragging innocent neighbors into her lies. Then came the final blow. Patricia received the bill for her legal defense, $32,000 in attorney fees for a case she lost. Add that to the $5,000 fine and her loss of income, and she was ruined. I saw her the day after the invoice arrived. She stood in her driveway, staring blankly at her house. The empire she'd built on fear and control had crumbled. 2 months later, her husband quietly listed the home for sale. The last time I saw Patricia Garrison, she was standing beside a moving truck, directing movers in silence. When she looked up, our eyes met. For the first time, there was no arrogance, no fury, just defeat. The woman who had ruled our neighborhood with an iron fist was leaving it in disgrace, her reputation shattered. Her finances gone, her power stripped away. As the moving truck rolled down the street, I felt no gloating, just peace, real peace, the kind that had been missing since I'd moved in. The new HOA president sent out a newsletter a week later, emphasizing respect for private property and the true limits of HOA authority. And for the first time, Maple Grove Court felt like a community again, without fear, without control, and without Patricia Garrison. She'd learned, in the hardest way possible, that no title or position gives you the right to trample someone else's rights. And every time she looks at her criminal record, or that $5,000 fine, she'll remember the day she called the cops on the wrong neighbor.